A very good evening to you who is watching us here on Church of Uganda Family TV. Thank you so much for keeping it here. This is the Family Hour, empowering families one episode at a time. Edrine, Osteen, Mukalazi is my name, and I welcome you to our Thursday edition where we discuss leadership and governance. Leadership is very, very important, and if we have good leaders, then we shall have a good nation. Now, before we pin the leaders that we think are leaders, you too are a leader. Look at your family. You have people you're accountable to. If you're a father or a mother, you have the children you are accountable to. So you're their leader. They look up to you. In other words, what you do is what they will do. So let us try to be good leaders. And how do we be good leaders? How do we keep it at the positive side? This is the answer here on Church of Uganda Family TV every Thursday as we discuss leadership and governance. Today we are looking at the newest disruptions in the world. Of course, we've had a lot of things. 2020 stormed us with COVID-19. We've had very many other outbreaks of both pandemics and epidemics, but how do we deal with them as leaders so that we are not caught unaware? Of course, we also have now technology advancement, and there is now that artificial intelligence that is taking up, which some people think is breeding laziness, but we shall see how it can be incorporated into leadership to yield positive results. Of course, with us is Dr. Patricia Achan Okiria, who is the Deputy IGG. Doctor, thank you so much for being here this particular day.
Thank you so much, Edrine, for having me, and good evening, viewers. Yes.
We also have Dana Angwech. Dana, it's a pleasure having you once again.
Thank you. It's always lovely to be here.
Sure.
Good evening, viewers.
I should welcome you also back from last week's show.
It was a good show.
Yeah,
very enlightening.
It was. It was one of those table shaking shows.
That's true.
Yeah, but today I want to look at something slightly different from what we looked at last week. We want to look at the disruptions, and if maybe we can start with some of these disruptions, because there are those that are openly known, like the ones I've just talked about, but you who are in places of leadership, you could be even seeing more that maybe some people are undermining. Dr. Patricia, to you, what are some of these disruptions in the world today?
Well, the world today is going through lots of challenges, especially arising from what you had just talked about, from the COVID, and the countries are struggling to recover. But there is one major one, the economic slowdown.
Okay.
The slowdown in the economic activities. Well, COVID had a lot to contribute to, but also there is a big challenge you're having of corruption, which is driven by money, materialism, and greed. Because people are greedy and selfish and self-centered, you find that many leaders are compromising the standards, and it is affecting the economy. For instance, if the government is planning to put in place to improve infrastructure or put in place service delivery, for instance, in terms of the healthcare facilities or education, and some people are busy stealing away that, then it basically affects the economic growth. And it's something not only happening in Uganda, it's happening to economies world over. So it is something which really needs to be given attention. I know the love for money is the root cause of evil today, but economies are being run down because of corruption, like I identified. So there are other global economic challenges like population growth, demand for resources, pollution, and so on, in addition to corruption. So I think the only way or solution we could have is basically to overcome even the challenges of globalization, to reduce poverty and inequality, and that is why you see government has come up with programs like PDM and yoga to try to reduce that gap and also to achieve the sustainable economic development. And like you say, there's a challenge of also managing the digital migration. People are going digital today, and yet we need also to focus on developing policies which help to improve on the economic challenges which we are experiencing as a country. So for me, one of those biggest things is basically the slowdown on economies. And I think you have had the World Bank withdrawing, or Americans withdrawing aid, and DGF going away. And if we are relying heavily on donor funding, then basically that has got implications on our economy as a country. And that means that as leaders, we now have to think about cutting the coat according to the cloth. We have to tighten our belts and see what it is we can do within the limited resources we have as a country, and to strive at encouraging people to grow the economy, encourage local farming, agriculture. You've had the head of state encouraging the people to participate in farming, not basically for feeding themselves, but also for their savings, to plan for the future ahead so that they can be able to sail through. Otherwise, the economy is biting hard, and you can hear the expressions out there. People are saying, "Twagala government etuyambe, economy eganye, economy." But it is something which we need to as leaders, think carefully about and think about improving. Yes, thank you.
Then we are looking at the disruptions across the globe. What are some of those that you can talk about?
So I used to hate the word disruptions. I thought it was very inconvenient until COVID came in, because it's a word that was used very commonly before COVID, but it became a reality after COVID. It just refers to the innovations, the changes that affect consumers, businesses, and industries in such a way that they either they give improvement or superior models to how people are receiving or transacting on businesses and the different things. And so for me, I think I have loved some of them and I have not liked some of them.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest disruptions that COVID brought was the work from home, work from home mentality. And it showed that, one, you can work from home. I don't need to be in a building to work. Of course, it depends on which kind of work, because there are people who need to be at work. But for more professional, blue-collar, intellectual thinking capacity, things like lawyers, people who work in different services, even in MTN, people work in different areas, didn't have to be, you can't say that for a hotel, of course. You didn't have to be at work. And so it showed that it could be cost-effective for the person, because they didn't have to get to work. It could be cost-effective for the bosses, because they didn't have to rent bigger space, because majority of our work is in the CBD, and many people rent space. And so when people after COVID, you notice that many people just reduced the space they were renting. People gave up a lot of space. It became very cost effective. Now the question for us as a country was whether we were also willing to transition from working at a desk and be faithful, delivering the same output, the same productivity, the same efficiency at home. So that was a major disruption that happened. The others which for me are very interesting are things such as the voice augmented searches. For those of you who have Siri or Alexa, you're thinking of all these things. I drive a lot, and I notice that there's police everywhere on the road, and so most times I can't pick up my phone to say anything. So I'll just press a button and say, Siri, find me this. Siri, call this person. It's usually call this person for me. And so this voice augmented searches, I think, are helping many people. It even helps also in engineering when you're searching on a computer. It's helping people in such a way that's reducing the time spent. It's helping people multitask. It's helping. The problem is it affects marketeers, people who were used to digital marketeers, who were used to helping people find search engines. Now they have to be fast and on their feet, because it's something that's happening. The other, which Uganda has been interestingly following up faster than I thought, was the cybersecurity. Because we went online, for majority of COVID. You notice that most of the things, meetings were held online. Businesses were actually, many online businesses began, which affect the economy. Many things began to transform the ordinary shape in which things were being done. That also increased criminal activity because they could hack into systems. I'm sure you've been to Zoom meetings that have been hacked, and usually it's hacked for something that's disdainful. But this, of course, helped countries begin to catch up on laws that they had not ordinarily paid attention to. Uganda tightened up their security, the cyber security. Different people began to have conversations about cyber security, which helped the country move forward. The policies that Dr. Patricia is talking about now, these are things that were changed by that disruption. Artificial intelligence, like you spoke about, that one in the beginning. I think the one that's biggest on the market now is the one I don't like, ChatGPT. I really don't like it. First of all, because it appears in everything. In my view, it encourages laziness. In my view, because it's really about helping people present a more dignified or thorough sentence. Say, for example, I send a chat to Dr. Patricia and I say, I don't want to speak slang. I say something that doesn't add up. If you have the app, it changes it for you, puts it in a dignified way, says what I want to say. It uses both my ordinary conversations at the back, things I would ordinarily say, and it presents a more dignified. Now, how people are going to write CVs, people are going to write resumes, people are going to write letters based on that. And I think it's going to help businesses understand, it helps businesses understand the changing nature of things, but it's one of the major ones that has come up. I think it is good, particularly in the legal field. I do know we used computers, or some people introduced computers to do what you call a due diligence, to search for a company. When a company wants to enter into Uganda as a market, what they will do is what you call a due diligence search. And that due diligence search will give them what's the statutory compliance of the company, the business, and everything that's happening. Now, more developed societies like South Africa use it a lot. The people in the West use it a lot. The difference between a human being doing it and a computer is that a human being is slower. So in the other market, people will pay. They will tell you, what service do you want? Would you want us to use the due diligence machine, the legal officer, and the due diligence, or would you like to use a normal person? So if you choose the machine, you get faster results, more thoroughly looked at results, but you pay higher. Now, for a country like Uganda, I'm not too sure anyone. If you said between a human being doing it and a person, our economy is not as fast. You know, we don't work as fast as we hoped to. So it may work for an economy that's fast developing. For us, on the other hand, I think I would choose a person. I'll just tell the client it will take a bit longer than expected, but we'll give you the result. The other is 5G. I think there's a company that boasted of 5G.
Yes.
Did they ever come? I don't think so. Really, it's just about faster connectivity, better viewing capacity. And I thought it was very interesting, especially for us as a nation. You know, when we all have mobile internet here and we think it's fast until people from another country come and tell us something. Your internet is very slow. We said, no, it's fast. I can speak to the person. But 5G was one of the biggest disruptions that came. And the idea was that it would be increased speed, higher quality of video streaming. And this would work for people who have meetings now online, especially people who are working from home. So you have the capacity to hear and deliver. The thing that I think would be good for us as a country, where you have for legal space, you have what you call witnesses who are abroad, who cannot be able to testify in court. It can be helpful in streaming the person. So I think it helps service delivery rather than going to a court and saying we have adjourned the case today because the person is out of the country. No, the judge can say then let's stream. Of course, the laws being constant, let's stream with the person so that you can let the person give their testimony from wherever they are. I think also government officials should be able not to travel for everything. They should be able to also stream some of these meetings.
Travel now.
There's a ban to travel. The last one, rather the second last is the 3D printing. That one is very interesting because 3D printing, I thought was very, it just prints designs and different things. So now instead of looking for an architect, I can print a design off, go to my builder and say, this is what I want. I've got it offline, printed it, this is what I want. It looks like this. So I've printed my house, my thing, all these things. So you see now you're eliminating a certain person. You can yes. You can also do that. People print gift shoe designs. I think it helps in terms of manufacturing, shortening the chain of service delivery, and doing all these things. The very last is one which has, for me, has made rounds on social media that makes me laugh. Is the virtual augmented reality. You know that thing where people put their specs on and it transitions them into another world. It gives them a virtual reality. So parents are using it for their children to distract them because children no longer go outside to play these days. So if you pass some mall around here in Kampala, you'll see people seated outside using that reality. The sad part about it is that it can also use very scary things. So I'm seeing a lot of people damaged as they're doing that reality because it's a reality for them in that moment. I think that one can disrupt the education sector in the sense that children don't have to go to school. They can give them a virtual reality that they're at school. The technicalities, this is still Uganda. You still have to, because parents are not going to be able to afford that. I think I've seen it saying it can disrupt the medical services and healthcare in diagnosing diseases. I still want to see how far that goes. But those are really the disruptions, minus Bitcoin, which came up. Those are still kind of the disruptions that are happening and changing the way services are being delivered.
When you talk about Bitcoin, there is some conversation that is going on social media, but we shall not get into that when it comes to investment. Dr. Patricia, having looked at the various disruptions, we want now to discuss the class gaps in society and the role of leaders in closing these gaps.
It's a parish development model which was launched in Mobuku on the 26th of February 2022, and this program basically aims at improving service delivery and also alleviating poverty and encouraging the household incomes to improve, enabling inclusive participation, sustainability and balance and equitable socio-economic transformation, and also to increase accountability at all levels. But the program at the moment is fast facing challenges. But we need to, as leaders, think about the mindset change. How can we have that mind shift to address the poor growth and persistent inequality? Now, we need to think about issues to do with land distribution. The mistakes which were made right from the time of the 1900 Buganda Agreement in respect to land distribution then, and we are still dealing with the effects of that. So there is that uneven land distribution and complex land tenure system. Then we have got the household sizes, like I did mention, population growth, and when people are having more children than they can take care of, that is already a red flag. Then there are disparities in education, inequalities in employment opportunities, urbanization, and general poverty in the country. Now we need to encourage citizens, first of all, to participate in their own development. Citizens need to come out and participate. How do they participate? It can start humble from the family. From the family level, what is it that they can do to generate income? Not just wait there and wait for this white collar job or something. Everybody can do something in order to survive. There are people who have started small businesses which are being supported with these small soft loans. We need to view citizens as agents of economic growth and development, not a burden to the economy. The moment they become a burden to the economy, then it will become very, very challenging and will contribute further to the economic slowdown. But when they are agents for economic growth, then they are able to do these businesses, contribute to taxes, contribute to the GDP through the exports and imports and so on. So citizens' involvement and participation in development will basically contribute to translating the country into a better place. And then also there is greater country ownership, which can turn into the country's national development. If we have ownership of this country, then we can have that spirit to contribute towards its development. First of all, by training, teaching, skilling, tooling, and encouraging people to come out, and then building that collective mindset. As leaders, we need to build that collective mindset. One of the most underappreciated aspects of sustainable development in Uganda is the nation's collective mindset. If we have a collective mindset and everybody can sing from the same hymn book and look at things the same way, then we shall have the purposeful approach. Because it's individuals, it's communities, it is institutions who build the necessary confidence to pursue those complex solutions we are talking about, to deal with some of those challenges we are facing as a country. How can leaders be able to use their own resources to shift the mindset towards greater ownership? We need to deal with ownership, and this involves leadership and participation at all levels. Every sector of the society should have a unified goal in which individuals feel to be part of a common development agenda. Meaning that if there is anything we are planning for this country or this nation, we need to involve the ordinary people in taking decisions which affect their lives as citizens. They need to contribute and tell us, this is something that will work for us, we will need this, we will need to be supported here and there. Not to just give them fish, but to teach them how to fish. Because when you look at economic growth, it's very, very essential, especially when it comes to improving the population of this country. We need to encourage more of economic growth in order to discourage the disparities we're talking about, the income inequalities, so that there is a balance. But remember, we talked about the challenge of corruption. If we can deal with that problem in this country, then we will go a long way to improving, because the cost of corruption in the country is very high, especially in respect to service delivery. Yeah. We have seen that we lose 10 trillion annually. How can we change that and use that 10 trillion for balancing up these inequalities we are talking about, for involving the citizens in things which concern them, for encouraging them to do businesses or participate in farming and agriculture, basically to increase or expand on their income, for savings and their personal growth and development, which eventually contributes to national growth and development and overall improvement on the economy of the country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patricia. We are taking a short commercial break, but when we return, we shall continue with this discussion. It is an insightful discussion that you do not really have to miss. We are looking at two things. One, the newest disruptions, but what you don't have to miss is how a leader can survive amidst the digital migration and the technological transitions. So stick with us as we come back. Thank you so much for watching Church of Uganda Family TV and Family Hour. This is our Thursday edition where we talk about leadership and governance. There is a lot when it comes to leadership and governance. Today we are looking at a lot of things, but basically we are looking at the various disruptions that have come up. There is a lot. Before the break, there is something very important that Dr. Patricia talked about that was faulty during the 1900 Uganda Agreement. And yeah, so I want to cut it at that. But before the break, we are looking at class gaps in society and the role of leaders in closing these gaps. Then, what are some of the class gaps you identify in society? And we link it now to the role the leaders have in closing these gaps.
Thank you, Edrine. There's a very good point that Dr. Patricia made that I think has to be picked up by every leader at this point in time. The idea of land tenure systems in Uganda, as she said, is quite complex. we have recognized many tenures. You have the Milo system, you have the freehold system, you have the leasehold system, and then you have public land. You have so many others. But specific areas that own Milo systems also have competing interests on the land. Say, for example, Dr. Patricia owns a Milo interest, and it's an example before they kill her. She owns a Milo interest, say, in this part of Kampala. And then I would have a Chibanja interest in it. So that means I own the plants that are on the land. I came in at a certain time, and so I am taking benefit of the land. You own a license on the land. She has allowed you to use it for a particular time. Say, for example, you want to use it for planting season, so she's using also part of the land. Somebody else needs to pass through her land to get through to their home, and so that's what you call an easement. So they're going to get that part on the land. You also have Mvunjo Busulu, so you can have someone who has a title and yet is not using the land. And because they're not using the land, you go into things such as eviction, and this causes people to now get into crime. Now they start to kill people, and then there are so many things that come up. The government is coming up with bland decrees and saying don't evict people. Now what's the remedy for someone like Dr. Patricia, who now owns the Milo interest? And so these competing land interests for us, which again she rightfully says was formed in the 1900 when the Kabaka owned land. There was Kabaka's land. That's even another type of tenure. There was Kabaka's land, there was Milo interest, there was freehold, there was leasehold. Now all these exist, especially in the central. And so nobody quite owns the piece of land in a way that they're taking benefit from it. And so that's why you have one side, Dr. Patricia's high-rise building is here, my slum is right next to her. Yours is there, and it's a shopping mall, and then you have something else. And this is creating such an atmosphere that does not lead to development of the economy or to help people. So I think that that's a question the government needs to answer and to address it as soon as possible in terms of closing the gap. We need to go back to a system where do we do away with individual ownership of land and everybody takes benefit of land. It's going to help the younger people, because land in Uganda is more pricey than it actually should be. Yeah, it's actually more pricey. People are selling land in Chira at prices that Kololo was selling in a short while, and yet they don't have access to electricity, to water, to all these things. And so government for me needs to answer that by finding a way in which we declare one tenure system. I know in Buganda it would be difficult because of Kabaka's land, but there has to be a way for us to close this gap, close this poverty gap, by us making land accessible to everyone for the benefit of everyone, and to reduce the high unnecessary cost of land. So I think that was really a good point. The other class gaps, of course, came, I think, with COVID. You see salary earners versus business owners versus hustlers in Uganda. So you see people who had a salary, and salary that was secured, you're either working for a big entity, international entity, which didn't close, hopefully, or government. Those are the people who managed to retain a certain level of lifestyle during COVID. But anyone that has a business that earns on a day-to-day, it became difficult, because someone who was selling tomatoes, at some point you had to sleep in the stall. People who sell clothes, many people lost their stalls at that time. People who what you call hustlers, the people who were standing, I love the taxi men who just wake up in the morning, stand on the thing and just call people. They're not the taxi tones, they're not the drivers. Their job is to wake up, go to the stage and start to call people.
They give you 500.
It makes no sense to me. You are an able-bodied man, go and do something. So you see, with COVID, those people lost what they call their source of income. It increased the gap. And as leaders, we need to create a way, we need to create more opportunities for them. I think it's so, some people's increased opportunities became, sadly, people left teaching and went to do borders, which increased the impunity somewhere in Kampala, because driving became impossible. But there has to be a way where we are creating a sustainable business fora for people to succeed. If the parish development model comes, how can it help the small business owners? How can it help the mother that was widowed by this? How does it help the youth who need to plan a lifestyle? How does it help the teacher whose only source of income was that? So if we redesign programs that can suit the reality that we live in, I think that would be a big way for us to close the gap. The other two for me which stood out were the education, as she pointed out. You see, parents who had children in international schools or out of the country continued their studies. Those who had children in traditional schools and private schools
Just put on hold.
were put on hold for 2 good years. Now that created a gap in how people were reasoning, functioning. And I was speaking to a father who had a child seated at home, and the child was supposed to be at campus, and something happened. Of course, when I say something happened, it means something traumatic actually happened to the girl. People went into situations as teenage pregnancy, abuse from parents, abuse from different people, because they were seated at home. Now their education system, their education track became hampered because they are not going back to school. I am happy that I was speaking to somebody on Sunday who said, I've gone back to retire in my village, but I'm making a school for girls who got pregnant during COVID time. I want them to be able to access education. Now that is a leader who is saying, look, there was a gap that was created. Some people were stopped from progressing. How then do we do that? That also brings in us as leaders, as government especially. How do we now how do we help the private schools? How do we help them? How do we help government schools? How do we help them catch up with those who were unable to catch up? The other one was health. I think health was also health was a difficult one. I mean, the bills I saw during COVID, I just thanked God I was in my house and not sick, and none of my close family members was in ICU, because it was difficult to see people pay 150 million and then have a dead body. Yeah, it was very difficult because now they probably got into debt. They got into things that they could not handle, and they still buried the person. The healthcare systems were also stranded. I mean, they were treating beyond their capacity, beyond what they could take. And so it's a competing interest. Healthcare system, the people were suffering. How do we prepare for pandemics? How do we prepare for that as leaders? Because we know that every 100 years there's going to be a pandemic. So now we should be preparing for the next 100 years. I want to be alive, but this recording will probably be alive. How do we prepare? Because we know that every 100 years there's probably going to be a pandemic. That means closer to 100 years, hospitals, schools, all these things. And that's where the new technologies came to close the gap. And so rightfully pointed out, for business models, the point was leaders needed to restructure their modes of business. Banks were negotiating loans. How many people went to negotiate their loans that were ongoing? Because they had businesses in places that were closed. They called people to renegotiate, which was a good opportunity to go and renegotiate and say, I'm unable to pay at this point in time. Can you lower the interest on it so that I can pay you step by step? How did they adopt the new technologies? Uganda took a while to get on Zoom.
Yeah.
And yet it's something that we should have jumped on at the beginning. Yeah, there were so many other platforms. And so the idea to reinvent and to shift the systems was critical, and still is critical for us if we want to develop, if we want to close this gap, so that the woman who is selling tomatoes today can be able to sell despite a pandemic, can be able to sell despite what is surrounding them. How they pay for the stalls, how did they negotiate with the person to make sure that over time as they opened up, they did not run out of product, but were able to stagger the payments to help people pay back. The other is training, as she said. We need training in these technologies that are coming. Without a doubt, not many of us are very schooled in these technologies. And it would be really an indictment on us as leaders if we closed our eyes to the fact that these technologies don't exist, because they are changing the face of service delivery. How do we do that? We do that by adapting, training ourselves, training our people to take on. For schools, I mean, I know that Africans are not big on homeschooling, but it's a trend that has been growing a lot, especially in Uganda. I'm still shocked by it because I always wonder what they are doing. But it picked up during COVID, Perhaps because people could not afford school fees that was coming on, or they couldn't afford different things. But it's something that we could do. So homeschool, but also communities could come together. We live in a community-based society. Communities stay usually, residential areas usually have people. Many times people are of the same age and the same status. They could have come together and helped. The other, I think, was to regulate the healthcare system. How do you balance the interests of the healthcare work and also balance the interests of the person who's being treated? You have seen that major thing that caused apparently a baby to stay in a hospital, and then they had to come up and clarify and back and forth. But you see, the problem was really that there is a problem on how to pay the money. That the only problem is money was the problem. The bill, yes. Bills were the problem. Why? Because she could not afford a baby in NICU. So how then do we as a society come up to help people who are giving birth? And that means we strengthen our healthcare systems. We strengthen the, what is that, Center 3, Center 4? Those services. I was very sad. I was in a village over the weekend in December, and we lost a grand aunt. And so when we got up, they said, "Oh no, they have to take the body to Mbale." Mbale is the next district from my village. Now I said, "There's no mortuary in this whole entire district that we have to get a body and drive it to Mbale." And so for me, that's an indictment on us. These are basic things that everybody can have access to. Toro, the whole entire Toro has no mortuary. We had to get the body, and someone had to drive it to Mbali so that the body can be treated, preserved, ready for burial. We need to strengthen how we are delivering healthcare. It's a basic thing. Mothers should never die traveling roads on bicycles to deliver. Our healthcare centers should be able to have that. That's how you close the gap, that nobody's running to Kampala or running to Nairobi for these things. You strengthen the healthcare at those basic levels, which will help people in every way possible.
Thank you so much, Diana. That is another point that really needs to be elaborated, but of course next time, not today.
Maybe you can allow me say just a word.
Yes.
Because when you look at sustainable development, for it to be sustained, there are certain conditions which must be in place before investments can become self-reliant in our country. And as leaders, we have a role to play in order to achieve that success. First of all, we have to enhance the impact of the domestic resources like land, which Diana talked about, health, education, and so on. And we have to have a favorable economic environment in order for these businesses to thrive. Then we also have to enhance the value of the locally collected taxes. We are collecting revenue, but is it enough to sustain the economy? We need to do that and develop the mindset of citizens to own up and be able to contribute towards that process of paying taxes as well. And then we also need to expand their access to finances. Are they able to get lower interest rates, for instance, for the loans they're getting? Because when you look at inequality, like Diana has elaborated, it impedes sustainable economic growth and development in a country. It also hinders the population from participating in the income generating ventures, because if someone cannot afford to take a mother to hospital, can he be able to grow tomatoes for business purposes or build other businesses? No. Then it creates fertile ground for political instability also, and a threat to sustainable development. So as leaders, we play a very critical role in ensuring that the citizens, first of all, own up this process of sustainable development. But there is a lot to be done by the state, by government, to ensure that the citizen is in that well-preserved, protected environment to enable them to flourish in their businesses, social services, and whatnot. So it plays a very, very significant role. And the leadership role, when you look at the leader who is willing to manage such crisis is one of the best leaders. Someone who has ability to make a mark at a time of crisis is that person who is offering true leaders. Meaning, we need to come up with solutions. We need to come up with a way forward We know that we have been experiencing challenges, but now what is the way forward for us to improve? And that's why Diana and I are laboring to explain and say this needs to be put in place in order for our citizens to enjoy services from this country. A leader must always step up and do something to deal with a crisis which is in place. And that is basically the role of the leader.
Wow. As we get to the closure of this discussion today, to you as a leader, we've talked about technological advancement, we've talked about artificial intelligence, which is something. So what is the place of leadership in technology?
Well, when you look at technology, was that my question?
Yes, yes.
When you look at technology, like the artificial intelligence Diana was explaining, and technology in leadership, you find that artificial intelligence, first of all, has become disruptive. For instance, we are not used to having those Zoom kind of meetings. Because I remember at one time during the lockdown, I was busy making a presentation for the University of Pretoria. And while I was endeavoring to explain my points, a truck passed saying, Muogo, Mayuni, Matoke, Muogo, Mayuni, Matoke. And the professor on the other side is like, Dr. Patricia, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, where is the new disruptions we are having? But you find that artificial intelligence has become a disruptive force across many aspects of life, and it impacts a lot on leadership choices. Now, this is changing how we work, how we think about the future by improving, first of all, the data-driven decision-making, and also having to adapt to what is happening. Sometimes it makes our work a lot more easy. For instance, if I don't have to burn fuel and come to office and I can attend the meeting from home without disruptions, it is a plus. If I don't have to pay people to go out to do investigations and I can have this information wired over, it's a plus. If we go digital, we'll be able to save lots of resources for this country. But also the cost of digitalization is where the problem is. It is a heavy investment for everybody to get used to that kind of technology. We have been talking about encouraging businesses. Today I see people just advertising what they have. Somebody has come from Thailand, he has bought clothes, he just goes online. And then you choose and say, bring me this one. How much is this one? And they don't have to have shops. They just send pictures. So technology has the potential to automate many tasks, freeing up more time for leaders to focus on strategic planning and other roles like in leadership development. Technology eventually could allow leaders even to multitask, like Diana explained earlier on. You can attend a Zoom meeting at the same time while you're cooking, preparing a meal, at the same time you're doing something else, but you're listening in and attending. So there are benefits of that artificial intelligence. For instance, we have data-driven insights, personalized feedback, like the example she gave, she's in the car and driving and she can get that feedback and get to communicate. Then it also brings together adaptive learning. We now have homeschooling and so on, and people get sessions and do tasks and assignments and send back. So artificial intelligence can help to analyze even the performance, behavior, the character, personality of leaders, and even the potential of leaders, and be able to even identify their strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. So I believe going forward, it is very, very important for us to embrace technology, to embrace the idea of going digital. It is just about our attitude as leaders. Do we have a positive attitude? Can we be able to embrace that? How does attitude impact on our leadership, especially towards embracing such technology? And then do we have the ability, first of all, to quickly learn and adjust? Because there is quickly learning and adjusting. Many people are used to PO box, but now they say drop a pin, and then they're like, hey, a pin, okay, this person can locate me where I am because I have this technology and so on. It makes it so easy than having to draw a map and say, when you're coming to my home, turn around.
The mango
When
tree.
you get the mango tree, you'll find a woman selling pineapples. Then that woman would go left.
So if the woman
So
needs
this
to work
technology, it makes work so easy. We only need to form and build that attitude and embrace it, and it will impact on positively on the way we do our business as leaders. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patricia. Then, what is the place of leadership in technology and artificial intelligence?
One, that leaders need to adapt. I think that's where Dr. Patricia ended. Adaptation is key for every leader. Because if you adapt, then you are able to now help transform the way you are delivering services and how you're growing your business, and in turn contributing to the economy. The other for the leader is to transform the business. I think more than anything, it helps the business give faster output, faster service delivery. Your consumers are happier, and perhaps with the more accuracy of computers, you have a more perfect outcome than if you had human beings just looking at it. The example I gave of a due diligence, when you have a computer that is that's fed with every single part of the say for example the information that it needs, it's able to churn out and give you the things that you need and that you desire, which are extremely important. So it's done in a more perfect way. The other is for the leader is to know the market. Not everything can be adopted. We can't transport everything sadly in Kenya and bring it in Uganda, or in South Africa and bring it in Uganda. We can't transport everything. And so the leader needs to know the market, know the reality. What does the market need? What does your business need? How can it help your business? And to think beyond just helping your business, because in the end, every business contributes to economic development. So that's what leaders need to do. But also leaders should never forget that the human touch is always important, because as much as you have AI and new technologies and all these things developing, the human touch is always important, because it gives you a machine cannot strategically think for you. It can give you research based on what it has looked at things you have fed it, but it cannot give you a strategic thought. It cannot give you a vision, an idea per se. And so the human touch can never be done away with. And so leaders need to know how to adapt, but also to factor in the human touch to help deliver the kind of service that helps grow the business.
Okay, thank you so much. And what are your parting shots on this subject we've been discussing today?
New technologies are very interesting, and I think that as a country we can't import everything that we see. For example, I'm not sure we can do 3D printing at this point in time. There are many things that we cannot do as a country, but the things that we can do, such as work from home, such as virtual augmented reality, all those things, I think that we as a country need to adopt them. But better still, I think that our laws need to be fast-tracked in how we are regulating these things that are coming in, because having them as an advantage is one thing, but when you have a regulation that's overseeing them and showing the boundaries within which they operate, you're also showing that you're protecting the citizenry and you're helping people take benefit as well as protecting them from things that are coming.
Thank you so much. Dr. Patricia, what are your parting shots?
For me, I think as leaders we need to embrace change, because if we don't, change will change us. We need to do crisis management, because when you look at crisis management, it draws out your leadership skills. We need to have courage, because courage helps to solidify your leadership potentials. We need to plan ahead to embrace some of these changes in technology, because planning actually helps to bring focus to leadership. And then we also need to encourage those below us to embrace such changes, to embrace such programs that are coming up, because when we have that encouragement, it brings a lot of support to our leadership. We need to be problem solving, because problem solving helps to refine leadership. So as leaders, we have a big role to play in order to make a difference in this country, especially by embracing the new changes, in the world order, by embracing the economic transformation, by welcoming the approaches in order to contribute towards our GDP and economic growth and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patricia. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you so much, you, our viewers. It's been a pleasure having you watching in today's edition. Tomorrow is a Friday. We shall have parenting with Claire Wenje, and don't miss Emmanuel and Mariana Baganizi sharing about parenting through different stages of a child's development. Stay blessed. We meet again next time.